Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'll be reviewing and paging through Pathfinder Burning Tundra from Paizo Inc. Does this make for a satisfying conclusion to the quest for the Frozen Flame adventure path? Or will you feel like you've been burned if you purchase Burning Tundra? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'm going to be reviewing and paging through Pathfinder Burning Tundra from Paizo Inc. This is the final chapter in the quest for the Frozen Flame adventure path and is written by Jason Tondro. This 100-page softcover is available right now, carries an MSRP of $24.99. Or if you'd like, you can grab just the PDF for $17.99. So without further ado, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Burning Tundra. So a few things before we jump on in. First off, the fine folks over at Paizo Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this adventure with you. And these days, it's important that you know that. I'm also going to stay picture in picture up here. So that means as I page through, I'll be cutting off a little bit of the upper left portion of the book. Speaking of paging through, we're not going to look at each and every page of the adventure, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's in the book, kind of talk a little bit about how I would approach running the quest for the Frozen Flame, and letting you know if I feel that Burning Tundra is worth picking up. Also, this is an adventure, so as much as I try to stay away from spoilers, there will be spoilers. So if you are a player hoping that your game master is going to run Quest for the Frozen Flame, or who happens to be in the midst of running Quest for the Frozen Flame, I definitely recommend tune out now. Don't want to have the surprises of this adventure ruined because you watch this review. Plus, there's over 1,300 other videos on the channel. Take a peek at one of those. Hopefully, it's just Game Masters and I now. So let's read the back of the book. Trailblazers triumph. The broken tusks find sanctuary at last in the mountain settlement of Hillcross. But this peace is destined to be short-lived. To complete their quest and prove themselves worthy of the title of Mammoth Lords, the scouts must defend their people from a frost giant siege, survive the perils of a cursed wilderness, and wield the sacred light of the primordial flame to vanquish their ancient enemies once and for all. The quest for the Frozen Flame adventure path concludes with Burning Tundra, a complete adventure for 8th to 10th level characters. Jumping on in here. First off, on the back of the front cover, we have a map of Hillcross, which is the settlement, the community the player characters are going to begin the adventure in. And then on the back cover, we have a map of Castle Grimgorge, where the epic finale is going to take place. So hopefully you've checked out my reviews of the first two chapters of the quest for the Frozen Flame. But if you haven't, the player characters are scouts for this nomadic tribe known as the Broken Tusks. And years ago, the tribe was trusted with the primordial flame, which is an ancient artifact which can actually change the weather. And they lost it. There's a pretty deep backstory to it all, but they didn't have it anymore. Although other people thought the Broken Tusks still did, including this warlike tribe called the Burning Mammoths, who is much, much larger than the Broken Tusks. And the Burning Mammoths have allied themselves with frost giants who also want the primordial flame. So it is a tenuous alliance, all in all. And they've been chasing after the player characters and the rest of the broken tusks, trying to get their hands on the primordial flame. The player characters have found the primordial flame, but it is cursed. So as this adventure begins, the player characters are trying to find out how can they lift the curse from the primordial flame. And they start off in the community of Hillcross, which is actually made up of ancestors of broken tusks. But even though the player characters and a lot of these NPCs share a common ancestry, the people in Hillcross are very suspicious of these newcomers. So the players are going to find themselves encountering various opportunities for them to bring the folks of Hillcross over to their side, to ally with them. Now, the player characters lead a following. It's essentially the tribe, but it's not only made up of humans. There's megafauna, there's other animals that they've befriended along the way. There's other allies that they've made who've joined the broken tusks. So by this point, the player characters could be leading a following of around 800 different NPCs. And it's one of the things I really, really like about this adventure path, where the players are growing their tribe. They're adding more and more people and creatures to their tribe. And I think it's very, very cool how they do that. Now, personally, if I were running the quest for the Frozen Flame, I would really, really try to tie a lot of the NPCs together with the player characters, because there are various different battles that take place. And I would have some of these important NPCs fall just to show how high the stakes are in this adventure and drive home some drama as well. So what happens here is the player characters have to help defend Hillcross from a vanguard of frost giants. And then they learn where they could possibly find more information about lifting the curse on the primordial flame. So they need to set off for this tar forest, which is actually very cool. That's the second chapter of the adventure. And at the same time, they know that the big bads, the burning mammoths and the frost giants, are going to be attacking Hillcross while the player characters are gone. So something that should play on the player characters' minds, something I would really, really drive home. Something else that's going to take place is the player characters are going to become mammoth lords. And these mammoth lords are able to control and ride megafauna, huge creatures like Tyrannosaurus rexes or giant cave bears or giant mammoths. And it's very, very cool, very, very interesting. And from the beginning of this adventure path, if I were running this, I would really, really sow the seeds of what a big deal the mammoth lords are. So that way, when the player characters become mammoth lords, they're going to have a real sense of accomplishment. There are also some encounters and set pieces in the second and third chapters that allow the player characters to take on like epic battles as mammoth lords riding their giant steeds. And I thought that was very cool as well. So we have this cursed tar forest, which is pretty interesting. There are some cool new monsters here as well. Some tar zombies, which I thought were pretty interesting. Player characters will also make some new allies who put them on the right path to where they need to go to lift the curse from the primordial flame. And that is going to be the Castle Grimgorge, which is kind of a dungeon delve, a little bit of a dungeon delve. There aren't a lot of key locales in the dungeon. The second chapter is more of a hex crawl. In fact, I should point out, there is a good amount of hex crawling taking place throughout this entire adventure path. And I really like that because, come on, it's an adventure path. A lot of this is on rails. But with hex crawling, the player characters feel like they're kind of in control of their own destiny a little bit more than they might if it was just a point to point to point to point sort of adventure. Plus, I like hex crawls. So, player characters are going to find themselves at this castle where they're going to have to take on the hybrid human demon who originally had set off to get the primordial flame in the original backstory and failed and has been haunted by it ever since. And the player character is going to have to battle this hybrid human demon as well as the leader of the burning mammoths and a frost giant leader. So this is going to be a big climactic battle that takes place to end the adventure. There's one last thing that's going to take place in the adventure path, and that is the aforementioned battle between the followers and the people of Hillcross with the burning mammoths and the frost giants. And the resolution I feel is kind of weak. It's essentially rolling a die and adding a bonus based on the player character's following that they've built. I think I would go into a little more depth than that. There are some thoughts and nuggets if you want to continue this campaign as well, with your player characters being Mammoth Lords. And then we get a breakdown of the community of Hillcross, as well as our adventure toolbox, which includes some new animal companions, which could have been part of the following. There's actually a list early on in the adventure talking about the different megafauna the player characters could use as steeds when they become Mammoth Lords. So we get some new magic items, some new spells, and then we get a bestiary with some new creatures, some important NPCs, and we also get the stat blocks for the leader of the burning mammoths, as well as one of the frost giant leaders and the human demon hybrid. So two of the big NPCs throughout the entire adventure path, we get their stat blocks here in the third chapter. There we go. There's the leader of the burning mammoths. And the cursed legendary warrior. And that wraps up Burning Tundra from Paizo Inc., the third chapter in the Pathfinder Quest for the Frozen Flame adventure path. So let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts and give this a review score. All in all, I've really enjoyed the Quest for the Frozen Flame adventure path from Paizo. There's a lot of things that I really like about it. So one is the player characters aren't saving the world. They're saving their people. And I think it's still an epic adventure, but it's kind of just a smaller focus. And I really, really like that about this adventure path. If I were running it, once again, I would make sure that I really enmesh the NPCs with the player characters. So when some of the NPCs eventually fall in the various different battles between the broken tusks and the burning mammoths and the frost giants, it really drives home how high the stakes are for this adventure. Love the fact that we've got some hex crawling throughout all three chapters of the adventure path as well. We've got some cool NPCs. We've got new rules for megafauna, which is in the previous chapter of the adventure path. So all in all, I have really enjoyed reading through the adventure path itself. I think all three chapters are very, very solid. I think this conclusion is very nicely done. I got to admit, the whole adventure path does focus a bit more on combat than I would prefer. I like to have a lot more options for my player characters to resolve situations without actually combat. I could tweak things. I don't think it would be that big of an issue. All in all, I think this is a really nicely presented adventure path. And if I were a game master going to run this, I would make sure that I had all 3 chapters before I started. Mainly because we've got 2 main NPCs. Even though the player characters aren't really going to encounter them until now in this finale, I would have liked to have had their stat blocks and information about them, some of their motivations and things like that, earlier on in the adventure. So that's why I would say if I were running this, I would want to make sure that I had all 3 chapters before starting to run it. On a scale of 0 to 10, I give Pathfinder Burning Tundra a very, very solid 8 out of 10. I think this adventure path overall is worth your while to check out. And it's nice and short. It's only 3 chapters. So you could probably bang it out in just a few months with your group. So check it out. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs right here on YouTube Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel by clicking right here. Check out the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, or find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for watching.